Hello, everyone. Obelisks are the stone columns of time, silent messengers that, from ancient Egypt to the heart of Rome, narrate history while standing upright. These columns are monumental structures that were carved about 4,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. They were usually erected in pairs in front of temples. Obelisks were monuments associated with the sun god Ra and symbolized stone spears of sunlight, pointing toward the sky. Egyptian hieroglyphs were carved onto these columns, praising the gods, especially Ra. At their upper sections, the name and image of the pharaoh who commissioned the obelisk were engraved, depicting him in worship before the sun god. The main purpose of this was to immortalize the pharaoh's names in history. In ancient Egypt, carving these columns from a single block of stone and then erecting them was considered a great feat of engineering and architecture. In fact, obelisks were symbols of the wisdom, knowledge, civilization, and technological prowess of the ancient Egyptians. When the Romans conquered Egypt and became fascinated by Egyptian culture and art, they transported many of these obelisks from Egypt to Rome and re-erected them there to display their power and dominance. Each Roman emperor inscribed his own name on the obelisks to demonstrate his authority and to eternalize his legacy. One of the most famous emperors to move obelisks from Egypt to Rome was Emperor Augustus. After the conquest of Egypt in 30 BCE and the end of Cleopatra's rule, Augustus transferred several authentic Egyptian obelisks from Heliopolis and other regions of Egypt to Rome to showcase Rome's power and supremacy over the ancient Egyptian civilization. He installed these obelisks in symbolic locations to represent political victory and his symbolic connection to the sun and divine power. Other emperors continued this practice. In ancient Egypt, there were numerous obelisks, but today only about 7 remain standing in Egypt. In the city of Rome, there are 8 Egyptian obelisks that were transported there from Egypt about 2,000 years ago. In addition, 5 other obelisks were built within Rome itself. Altogether, 13 obelisks stand in the city of Rome. 7 of the famous obelisks in Rome are Peter's Square, the most famous of all, a symbol of the Vatican and the center of Catholicism. It is the only obelisk that never fell during antiquity. This silent stone, from ancient Egypt to the heart of the Vatican, has witnessed faith, power, and centuries of history. 2. The Lateran Obelisk, Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano. The largest obelisk in the world, like a king who traveled from the Nile to Rome, and still stands tall. It is known as the King of Obelisks. 3. The Flaminio Obelisk, Piazza del Popolo. The historic entrance to the city of Rome. A gateway to Rome, where for centuries, travelers first glimpsed the eternal city beneath its shadow. 4. The Navona Obelisk, Piazza Navona. Rising above the fountain of the 4 rivers, where Egyptian history and Baroque art meet in a single breath. Very popular among tourists. P5. The Minerva Obelisk, Bernini's elephant, Piazza della Minerva. Known as the Little Elephant, designed by Bernini. Ancient wisdom, carried on the back of an elephant, conveys the message that knowledge is heavy, yet enduring. 6. The Pantheon Obelisk, Piazza della Rotonda. Standing opposite the Temple of the Gods, a stone that connects sky and earth. Highly visible due to its proximity to the Pantheon. 7. The Montecitorio Obelisk, near the Italian Parliament, part of a vast, ancient Roman sundial. Once the sundial of emperors, today it witnesses the passage of politics and time. The only obelisk that has remained standing for 2,000 years without falling or being relocated is the Vatican obelisk in St. Peter's Square. The others collapsed due to earthquakes and were later excavated from rubble, restored, and re-erected. One of the obelisks standing in front of the Pantheon is short. It is likely only a portion of the original Egyptian obelisk, which was broken, and only that remaining section was restored and installed. The obelisk now standing in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican was carved in Egypt around 600 BCE. nearly 2,600 years ago. About 2,000 years ago, one of the Roman emperors transferred it to Rome and erected it near what is now the Vatican, in the Circus of Nero, a chariot racing arena. About 500 years ago, during the construction of St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope ordered the obelisk to be moved and erected at the center of St. Peter's Square. The obelisk is 25 meters tall and made of granite. Around 80 years after the obelisk was relocated, Bernini designed St. Peter's Square in an elliptical shape, placing the obelisk precisely at its center. One theory suggests that Bernini was influenced by Copernicus's ideas that the Earth moves in an elliptical orbit around the Sun, and designed the square so that the obelisk would symbolize the Sun at the center of the solar system, the Pope as the center of the Church, and Jesus Christ as the center of the universe. Thanks.
I am Augustus. I brought these obelisks from the land of the sun to Rome, so that time itself would know the empire's glory can command even stone.